Thank you for coming to today's scrap meeting. We have a pretty busy agenda, and I would like to get it done in 1 hour because I have another meeting at 2. So I'm going to go ahead and begin. Our first agenda item was to discuss whether you want to continue to review the issue of new genre headings for manga after viewing the report on the searches that were executed in the catalog. So, does anyone have any interest on continuing to discuss this topic? Feel free to unmute yourself. I did mute everyone, so I was hearing some background noise, but feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to comment or type in the chat.
I think that for the top 5 or 10, we should be looking at it, because if we're getting search results, having that data out there is going to be helpful, even if it is for a small amount of patrons. And the more they get used to finding it, they may find, we may find that the usage overall increases.
Okay.
I had asked our person who does the manga, and they informed me, which I was not aware of, that LCGFT has added several of these genres in the last year or so. So I'm not
Okay.
sure. It seemed like it was the most popular genres and the ones that were coming up in the searches. So I'm not sure if it's really something we need to be looking as far as local. We might need to go back and add them to older records, but it's
All right, I'll take a look at that to see if there's any new headings that I didn't notice when I last looked, and see if there's anything within the top 10 to 15 for each of the last few years that's not in a subject heading. And then I'll get back to you on that next meeting. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda was to review the cataloger's wiki pages that had the word recommended on it. I didn't have time to look at each one, but I knew that bibliographic input standards was reviewed recently, so we might not need to look at that one. And I was wondering if anyone found anything within any of these pages that you felt needed to be updated to more stronger wording that should be required and not recommended, or anything that could have been confusing and needs to be updated.
I found several things
Okay.
that need to be introduced or looked at. And I started with the bibliographic input standards and looked at the pages we're reviewing in light of that.
Okay.
Because looking there, one of the things that I thought might be helpful is that on that page, embedding links to the related wiki pages, whether it's has to do with the title information, or whatever pages. If we have information, there should be. So the first one where I found discrepancy is in the enhanced 505. On the bibliographic input standards, it says that the enhanced 505 CCS recommended, but the enhanced is core for the list of materials on the contents page. On the wiki page proper, it was basically saying it was all recommended, not so much that it was core for anything. So that was a place where I found that there would be discrepancy and confusion as a result. The same thing was in the 520 and 521 note fields, because while the 520 said it was required core for children's. On the wiki page, it was recommended for AV, but in the bibliographic input standards, we're saying core for AV resources that require equipment to use sound recordings, video recordings. Same with intended audience, we're saying in the standards that it's core, yet on the page itself, it's being listed as recommended.
Those are good points. Since it's core in bibliographic input standards, I'll go ahead and update it on those individual pages to remove the word recommended and make sure it's been clarified that all of the pages match the bibliographic input standards.
Okay. And the other thing I found, because I was also opening all the links, not all of them opened, namely on the award winner page. I can send you my list of where I had problems.
That would be great, yeah.
And page.
I think some of these pages have been, or some of the web pages for the awards have changed, so I haven't updated those recently.
I think those were a lot of the ones I was finding, or the link where we, from the awards page worked, but the link, like on the Illinois awards page, that link worked, but what was on the awards note information didn't. Links in the top text worked, links in the bottom text did not, or they arrived at different destinations. So I was also finding some points like that with the OLAC,
Right.
that they're not pointing to the pages they once did.
Yeah, I know I updated some of the OLAC headings, but I think I had left some because I couldn't find the page yet. So I definitely need to make sure that I find those pages or we remove them if they don't exist anymore.
Okay. And the other point where I was finding that was in bibliographic input standards in the introduction. In the first paragraph, these standards were developed based on the recommendations of the Rails Cataloging Working Group. That document isn't there. It points elsewhere, but that information is on a different page, more or less, and I can send you that link as well.
Sure, that would be great.
Okay. I also had a lot of difficulty getting the on the summary note page, the older document with the actual instructions on writing a summary note to open. It was my third try before it did.
This one at the bottom?
Yeah,
Or
this.
see Library of
Yeah,
Congress.
I had
Yeah.
that issue too.
Yeah, the other ones for the Library of Congress go to the SIP page, which don't really talk about summaries. It just talks about
Right.
SIP program.
Okay.
So whereas I think there's value in the document, if we're not going to be able to access it easily, do we want to at least pull some of the cogent details out and have those maintained locally rather than linking out?
That makes sense.
There were a couple places where I was just things for consistency in the way some of the links were being handled, and I can forward those to you rather than taking time to talk about them
that would be
here. So, and then the last thing I had on the call number analytics for periodicals page was a lot that we have there is really detailed about using serials control module, but we're staying in here that it can be done either through the serials module or the cataloging module, in which case then some of the examples and guidance needs to give what we're going to see in the cataloging module versus what we see in the serials module.
Okay.
And I can, again, forward you my entire list of things.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, we do still have two libraries that are not using the serials module and will not be doing it for the foreseeable future that have item records. So I
Um,
can definitely
yeah,
take a look
I
at
can
that.
tell you that we're definitely one of those because the cost of using the serials module for us was greater than the benefits we were seeing. So we just went with straight cataloging and
Okay, I didn't have you on the list. I'll email you about that later. For some reason, I thought
okay.
you were using the serials
We
module.
we had been. We're leaving serials holding statements in because of how they display in the pack, but our items are not under serials control.
Okay.
And we're in a rather messy process of cleaning all of that up at this point.
Okay. There's a an update to a setting from version 7.5 that I'll need to talk to you about that causes issues when the items are not linked to serial holdings records.
Okay,
But I'll email you that later.
okay.
That was a great list of things to correct. Does anyone else have any issues they found with this list of pages that you'd like to bring up?
I just had one thing, and maybe it just needs clarification. On the put standards page,
Mhm.
under requirements for all records, it's called requirements for all records, but then before it lists all of the access points, it says recommended access points to include. So are we saying
Okay.
those need to be required if they like, because I know some of them, aren't applicable for everything. Um, like series headings and stuff like that. But instead of saying recommended, or we want to say required access points if applicable or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can definitely change that, I think, without having to ask for approval from governing board. Are there any other points to update that anyone else has found? All right, great. Let's move on to the next agenda. One of the things from the previous meeting was someone had suggested that we added images of bibliographic records to some of the pages in the catalogers wiki. And one of the suggestions was to review some of the AV pages to see if those would be useful. So I was wondering what your level of interest is in adding these pages, if we should continue to pursue this topic, or you feel, or not the pages, adding the images to the pages, or if we should leave it as is.
Rachel, can you hear me?
Yes.
Um, I I think somebody said at the last meeting that they felt that some of this was more of a training issue for copy catalogers than CCS, local practices issue.
Mhm.
And I would tend to agree with that. It's not that I don't think it would be worth it. To add images, but I think if someone is having a hard time understanding why something is the way that it is, that might be more of a training issue.
I
Okay.
feel like with as much as there already is to like keep track of, having to make sure that the examples we use are always up to date with changing standards is just a little too much. I mean, we could link to like, OLAC. I mean, again, but this is already out of date, but like OLAC, when they did their unified best practices, they have a whole document that's just examples.
Okay. I'll have to see if I can find it. They changed their webpage
Yeah.
to university's institutional repository, and it's hard to find things now.
I have a link. I'll put it in the chat. Hold on.
Okay, great. See, we have two comments about the topic. One, what Nancy said, she does not feel strongly about adding the images, and Ross would prefer not to.
I
Is there any
understand
other
the,
comments on this?
yeah, I understand the desire to add images. It's just the only problem is having an image, the records are never going to look the same. It's only kind of going to
Right.
give general things. And if it doesn't, we can't really cross-reference, and then you have to go back. Well, if it doesn't have this, should this be removed, or can it stay? And it's a nice idea, but in practice, I think it's going to be harder to implement than it's worth it.
Okay. Yeah, I think everyone seems to be in agreement that it's not really worth taking the time to do it. I can look to see if this document that Sarah posted a link for is worth adding to it. But the records could definitely become dated or have a lot of differences in it. So let's move on to the next topic. So from the previous meeting, we discussed if there was any interest in adding some new local genre headings that Waukegan has been using. One was books for memory challenged adults, and I also received a suggestion that instead of books for memory challenged adults, we use materials for adults with memory challenges. So it's not specifically for books, but could be used for all materials and as person first language. And the other one is adult literacy. So I did ask Fran at Waukegan for more information about how they apply these headings. They say they use them for very specific collections. They haven't used books for memory challenged adults very often. It's only on 3 records. And adult literacy collection includes books from specific publishers that publish books for adult language learners. There's also the LCSH, Readers for New Literates, and that's in some of the records, but not all of them. So is anyone interested in including these headings for our list of local headings that are allowed? And is anyone interested in passing a motion on it?
I'm interested in pursuing materials for adults with memory challenges because we will have a
Yeah.
wider usage for broader language in our overall database. And adult literacy, I think having that as a local option could definitely increase usage of the term. Because our local listing, we're talking genre headings now, we're not talking subject headings, correct?
Right. These are for genre headings.
I'd almost rather have, rather than adult literacy, readers for new literates as a genre heading, a local one. It just seems to be more inclusive of a term to me.
So instead of using the LCSH, use it as a genre heading for readers.
Correct.
Okay. So it sounds like there's an interest for using materials for adults with memory challenges and readers for new literates instead of adult literacy. Adult literacy has there's some interest in the chat. Let's see. it looks like the interest in the chat is for the materials for memory challenged adults.
I have a question. So
Yes.
what is the difference, or is there a difference between adult literacy and readers for new literates? And is this related to ESL, or is ESL something else?
I think it is related to ESL, but can be a bit broader, like for people with learning disabilities that still are learning to read as adults. I think there's some like classes that are sometimes at community colleges or GED classes that may use these readers. So I think the difference between adult literacy and readers for new literates sounds like adult literacy would be more like a subject heading or classification, or not classification, subject heading or collection type of name because of how it's worded. And readers to me sounds more like it's appropriate for a genre name.
Okay.
The reason I like the LCSH for the genre name is that when we're looking at new literates, it may or may not be specifically adults. We could be looking at older teens, younger teens, because if you look at the number of the statistics for different schools and where they're at with their reading comprehension and just reading in general, it just made more sense to me.
Okay. Yeah, I know my library does have these types of materials, and I am interested in this. So yes, definitely interested.
Great. So it looks like we have all but one person here. I did not see Rachel come in today. Let's see. So I think that's still enough. If you're interested in passing a motion today, we could. Is someone interested in doing that today?
I will. I motion that we take the two genre headings, readers for new literates and materials for adults with memory challenges, to CAM for vote.
Okay. There is just a comment in the chat that I missed. Nancy said she's interested in either readers for new literates or materials for new literates. So I was wondering if you had any interest in using materials instead of readers, because that would be a bit broader. Maybe include audio too. I'm not sure what else would be included. Maybe kits or something. Oh, kits. Nancy said it would be inclusive of kits.
I amend my motion to say materials for new literates as opposed to readers for new literates.
Okay, great. Can you repeat your motion?
We'll see. I motion that we take to CAM two new genre headings, materials for new literates and materials for adults with memory challenges.
Okay, great.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the minutes. Can you repeat your name? I didn't hear it. Who seconded?
That was Adrian that seconded.
Okay. Adrian, you're not on the CAM membership list this year. Is there someone who's on our list that would second it? Okay, Nora can second it. All right, so I'm going to do a roll call vote. Sarah Scodius.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Kelly Green.
Yes.
Rachel was absent. Nora, you seconded it. And Kathy motioned. Nancy?
Yes.
And Brad.
Yes.
Great. The motion passed. All right, so we've got some new things on the agenda. The first one is the study program information note. So someone reported finding that the study program information note indicates the guiding reading level should be in the 526 on the page, but the page for Lexile has an example of the guiding reading level in 521. And they found that there were more records coming in from OCLC that had it in 521 instead of 526. I felt it was maybe the correct field to put it in the study program note since it's a specific program. But I don't have any personal opinions either way. So the question they wanted to bring to scrap was if we would want to recommend that the guiding reading level be placed in the 521 if it comes in from OCLC or if we find it in a book in the 526 instead.
I am confused. The wiki says specifically says it shouldn't be Lexile levels in the 526.
I'm sorry, Brad, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Can you try to speak
Sorry.
louder?
The wiki says that 526 shouldn't be used for the Lexile, like for correcting OCLC records. That first
Right,
sentence
so
is like, is that
Lexile and guiding reading level are different different companies or organizations. So guiding reading level is like a separate program. So Lexile is in 521, but guiding reading level will have like a specific label of guiding reading level in it.
okay? I understand.
So one of the benefits of using the 521 for the guiding reading level and moving it to there is that it's more searchable than 526. So if you wanted to search in the 526, you would need to use a SQL query to do that.
I'm all for making searching easier.
Perfect. I agree. The searching needs to be as easy as possible, especially when we're looking at PAC usage and staff usage in LEAP. I don't think many of them are familiar with SQL or the availability of the searches that they do have.
Sounds like everyone's in an agreement that it should be in the 521. Would someone like to make a motion to bring this to CAM to recommend that this become the local practice? Or I'm not sure if we even need to. Does someone think we need to bring this to CAM to require it or update the wiki?
I don't think we need to go to CAM to do general updates, kind of like verifying links, making sure it's all consistent within itself. But if we're changing the guidelines and guidance for what we're actually cataloging, that we're moving from this field to another, there at least needs to be some general announcement of it or a recent change made, and here's the rationale.
Right. It was already on the Lexile page for the guiding reading level, and then I created the study program note and used the guiding reading level because that was an example on like the Mark 21 page. So I think this would be a case where I would just need to update the study program note page and then just make the announcement. Maybe we don't need the vote on this one.
That makes sense.
All right. Looks like Nora commented in the chat that seems reasonable. Does anyone else feel any different about that? All right, let's move on to the next one. So in the listserv, we had a bit of a discussion about the Spanish subject heading for Dia de los Muertos instead of All Souls Day, or was it All Souls Day or All Saints Day? I think it was All Souls Day. All Souls Day. So we were interested in discussing a new requirement to allow the Spanish subject heading Dia de los Muertos in records for the English language books, because the local practice is to add Spanish subject headings only to Spanish language books or materials. So it made sense in the discussion of the listserv, given that Latin Americans mostly know it by Dia de los Muertos, and that's what we frequently call it in the United States as well. So is anyone interested in making a motion on this?
I am, because I think we should be treating it similarly to how we do other cultures' holidays where they're known by different names, where they don't have a correlation to an English holiday or English American holiday, for lack of a better phrasing for it, or even just a religious thing. I mean, when we're looking at different religious holidays, we don't just all label them with the closest Christian holiday. Each holiday has its own. So Hanukkah is Hanukkah, not like the Christmas, the Jewish Christmas, you know? So, yes, I motion that we allow the Spanish subject heading for Dia de los Muertos in records for English language books, and also Spanish subject headings for other holidays in the native language.
I second. That's Sarah.
Okay.
Just I need a clarification. So the authority record for All Souls Day as 450 for Dia de los Muertos and Day of the Dead. But these are not, when people are searching the catalog, or whether it's LEAP or the public catalog, if you search by those terms, it will not bring All Souls Day, correct? The Sith references don't work when searching the catalog?
If you
Yeah.
search for Dia de los Muertos in the catalog, it would only bring up the records that have it in it. As a keyword search, it would, if it is in like a summary or contents note, that would also allow it to be brought up.
Right. So the references from the authority records in our catalog, they're not being used by the software, right?
Right, the catalog would not access the notes,
And we not access the
only the links
450s.
fields.
Right, we not access the 450s in the authority
Right.
records. And that's not going to happen anytime soon, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Clarification on my motion. I'm not recommending that we do away with appropriate English language subject headings in favor of Spanish
Right.
language subject headings. It's an addition to, and we're allowing it, not requiring it.
Right. Okay, so Kathy motioned and Sarah seconded. So I'm going to do a roll call vote on the motion to recommend to CAM to allow the subject headings in Spanish for Dia de los Muertos and any other holidays in the native language, in addition to LCSH. Kelly?
Yes.
And Rachel is absent. Oops. Nora? Nora said yes in the chat. Kathy motion. Nancy?
Yes.
And Brad.
Yes.
Great, that motion passed. All right, the next thing on the agenda was a schedule for reviewing the catalogers wiki. So I created a list of all the pages and created a spreadsheet that's in the scrap folder. And looking at the amount, and I don't know how comfortable you are with the amount of pages to review. Some are very short, some are very long. I'm wondering if how much you would want to review on like a quarterly basis. Do you think we should assign like one person to review each one, or have the whole group like review the same amount of groups or the same amount of pages together?
I like to
So this
work
is something that,
sorry. I
sorry,
like to work at least with one other person on the same thing, so we can compare.
okay, 2 at a time.
I like the
Yeah.
idea of having multiple
Together.
people, minimally 2, if not the entire group, on the same set of pages. And if
Okay,
we're balancing page length and kind of like topics, so we're grouping like things together, then that
that
would
makes
make
sense.
sense.
So we
And
don't have to review.
are we doing this on a 2-year or 3-year basis?
Well, we don't have to review every page every year, and Deborah was interested in having us review the bibliographic input standards every 3 years. So
Okay,
if we'd want to do like a rolling basis of reviewing pages on a 3-year basis, would that make sense?
that makes sense. And based on the number that are out there, that's like 33 a year, so quarterly,
Mhm.
that's like 8 pages. And that
Right.
doesn't seem insurmountable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, 33 per year. So we're already like halfway done with this year, so it would be more like we could potentially review 15 this year. Would that make sense? Or a bit more?
You mean 15 more?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense because we have 2 meetings left after
Mm-hmm.
today.
Okay. So I'll do some research into what pages that would make sense to group them together, so that they're on like the similar topic. And we've already gotten some review done, so we'll just add 15 more to that in addition to what we've already done.
That makes sense. I'm going to recommend that this year we consider looking at the CCS cataloging technical group bylaws, because if changing the meeting time needs to be approved in the bylaws, then it would make sense to do that at the same time.
Okay. I don't think changing the meeting time needs to be officially approved, but I think as long as everyone is happy with the meeting time, that would be fine. But we can definitely review bylaws. I'll have to find them. And I'll email everyone the pages that and the links once I figure out what would be the best grouping for this year. Since we've been talking about AV, I may choose AV because that has a lot more variations. Is there anything else that anyone else wanted to talk about today that hasn't been added to the agenda yet?
There's probably not enough time to talk about this today, but maybe next meeting we could talk about, I was just at ILA, so it's on my mind, because I was presenting with the DEI and metadata networking group. And I was wondering if we could talk at a future meeting about adding some local disability and accessibility and LGBTQIA plus local
Yeah,
headings
definitely.
based on, yeah, because they both have posted their toolkits. So,
Right.
which
We
I
can
know
definitely
I know
do
you
that
know
this year.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll send that page out and everyone can review it. And one thing to keep in mind too is Library of Congress has added and updated some headings recently, so that's something we need to also keep in mind is that they're going to be doing some regular updates to that because they're switching to person first language. So I'm not sure how often that's going to happen. I think there was some more recently, but I have to go back and check on that. So I'll send that out, and we can talk about that next week. I mean, not next week, next meeting. Is there anything else anyone else would like to add to the agenda? All right, it looks like we don't have anything else to talk about today, so we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting. So I'll send out a link for our attendance and have a great day, everyone.